maybe, where the lighting may be.
Now that's
studio props.
Let me grab a piece of paper because I'll remember that way. Right, 1 second, I'll be back.
Looks like you shrunk, Alan.
Yeah, no, shut up. Morning, Selena. Morning, Sue.
Morning.
Morning. Welcome to Panny's workshop on getting the perfect grey background.
Perfect.
So he's left it there for you to get the correct colour.
He knows his stuff. He knows his stuff, this guy.
Morning. Hello, Sue. Right.
Hiya, you're just picking up your handbook there to work from.
Yeah. I'm writing down notes. Right, clean up background.
I heard that you bought that book, Photoshop for Dummies or something.
Yes,
that one?
base all of this on.
Perfect.
Yeah. No, I got with the Photoshop for idiots. Okay, clean up backgrounds. Go on then. Couple of other quick things.
Oh, and then we put us in a spot there, haven't we? Now you ask.
Day to day that you think, oh, I wish I didn't have to do that.
I'll tell you what. One thing I'm going to need to. Can you save if someone sends you an action, for example? You know the actions you have on your Photoshop.
Yeah.
How can you save all of those so that if it crashes, you can put them back in again? That might help.
You've got to save them as groups, I think. Yeah.
And you've got to save them off your hard drive as well.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
Just literally save them on a separate hard drive. That's what I did with mine. Put them all in a folder and save them on a separate hard drive.
Yeah. But there is a thing though. Every time, you know, when Photoshop does a major upgrade. Yeah. They usually you usually have to dump it. So actually, yeah, that's a point.
Saving actions.
They're still coming on, Annie, so we'll wait until... I am recording this because I think it's quite funny. Morning, Morag.
Hiya, you're right.
Morning.
Morning.
Morag, have you got any quick questions that you'd like me to deal with? Is there
What's for lunch?
Yeah. No, I'm fine, thank you. I'm going to just soak up whatever happens, so thank you.
All right, just a minute. Day to day, when you're working, what's the most tedious thing you do that you wish you didn't have to on Photoshop?
Turn it on and wait 7 minutes.
No.
Yeah, I'm fine with Photoshop really, but I always pick up lots of tips whoever I watch. So I'm really just looking forward to seeing what I can learn.
Okay.
I think that's the main thing, Penny, isn't it? When you're doing a shoot and there's little bits and pieces in there that you need to take out, or you've done the one the other day about reducing the chin, which was really, really good.
Yeah.
That's really helpful. On a day-to-day basis,
yeah.
Speeding up workflow, isn't it? Really.
Yeah. Okay.
On a personal basis, Penny, can you make somebody thinner and taller in real life?
Me, please, after lockdown.
I often walk down the street and I look at people. I think, oh, I could patch all that mole out.
Is there anything that you do in the raw within Photoshop? You know, you can pull it down as a filter.
Oh,
is there anything in that you do quite quickly to fix things that we should be aware of?
Okay, right. I'll make a note of that.
Yeah,
we were saying before, Morag, that we don't know what we don't know, which is quite difficult.
Yeah.
You know that shortcut, you've got a JPEG on screen on Photoshop.
Yeah.
The shortcut you can use, can't you, to open it up in RAW, can't you?
Yeah.
And that's so you can do a bit more adjustment than you can normally with contrast and curves.
Yes.
Morning, Jane. Morning, Janet.
Morning.
You want that shortcut?
I'll show you the shortcut.
Do you want to take, when you're ready to take the screen, Penny, you carry on.
Okay. All right.
I'm going to have to give you access. Yeah.
I'm just going to make apologies in advance. I'm going to have to jump out of the meeting at some point because I've got a client call coming in. So, yes.
I got a funny feeling that you're going to meet Peter because he said the same thing before you came on. So, and you're not that far away from funny suspicion here that, anyway, I won't cause any, or chit-chat or anything like that.
I just want to know whether you've recorded my wife coming in having a go at me because I was shouting too loudly.
No, unfortunately, I missed that, which is a great shame.
Love the look of your fireplace, Peter. Let's have a look. Move your head. Ooh, lovely. Nice.
Peter, no, further down. Go on. Over. Over to you, Pani.
Right. Okay. So you can see my desktop, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, welcome everyone. So this is a picture that Phil sent in. From the hundreds and hundreds of people that didn't send any in, Phil sent one in. Okay. So are we going to mute everybody just in case there's any distractions? Or shall we leave
ourselves?
Wait for questions.
Yeah, mute yourselves if you can, please.
Yeah. And if you want to ask questions, please unmute yourselves and ask the question. Okay. So Phil sent this picture, and it was actually quite a nice photo of this dog with, oh crikey, I've forgotten what's it called when they've got two colour eyes? I put it on my Instagram. I had a couple of huskies like that. Yeah, they got a special name. Anyway. So Phil was asking, how can you make a picture sort of pop? And how can you make it stand out? And he says he looks at other pictures taken by photographers and their pictures seem to sort of jump out at you and mine don't. Well, there's a couple of things that I do to focus the eye of the viewer within the picture. One of the first things is to remove distractions. So to do that, minimizing everything here. To do that, I always create a new layer. So I work on a separate layer, so if anything goes wrong, I've got a fallback. One of the first things to do is press R on the keyboard. Okay? R means rotate. And then I can turn the picture upside down very quickly. Okay? Then, because things are a bit more unrecognizable when you are looking at a picture upside down, like faces, for example, you tend not to recognize faces as easily if the picture's upside down. You begin to realize where your eye is being pulled to in the picture. So if I'm looking at this, I can see distractions here, this bit here, maybe that. The leaves possibly, but this bit here tends to be a bit bright. I mean, obviously the dog's fur at the front here is bright and his face there on that area is quite bright. And the foreground is quite bright. So one of the things, now, what I'm doing now, so I pressed R, I spun it around. If I want to come out of that, I just press escape. And then I get out of R by pressing something else like M for marquee, just to make sure I don't accidentally rotate it anymore. Okay? So remember that R, you get this funny little symbol come up, you spin it around, whichever way you want, and then your eye starts to go to places that just draw the attention of the viewer. So that's the first thing. So I'm going to press M. Now, another thing that I do to see which parts of the picture are the brightest, I go onto the info panel. I press M for marquee because it gives me the crosshairs. Hopefully you can see that there, yeah? Okay, as opposed to a brush where I don't know exactly what I'm picking up on. If I press M for marquee, it gives me the crosshairs. And then if I look in the info panel up here, where the RGB is, if I go over a light bit, it's going to give me the readings that I've got for the brightness, remembering that 255 is the brightest and 0 is the darkest. So if anything is at 255, it's too bright, nothing will register except for white on a print. But it's actually not just 255 that goes white on a print, it's within about 5 of that. So anything above 250 is going to be no detail on a print, and anything below 5 is going to be no detail on a print. Okay, so when it comes to presenting images like for competition or for critiques or for a panel or something like that, you really want to take care of that because you don't want things that shouldn't be pure white, and you shouldn't have things that shouldn't be pure black. So if I hover over here, as I said, if I hover on this part of the dog here, it's, oh, oops, let me zoom in. Okay, so if I hover over these bits here, look at that. 251 the blue channel, that's because it's reflecting light off the sky. Yeah, so it's pretty close, it's pretty light there. Yeah, so I'd want to do something about that. So to sort out the things that we've got there, there's a couple of ways of doing it. Often people use a patch tool, and I hope that we all know what to do with the patch tool. So you can just press J on your keyboard, it gives you the patch tool. I've got, you know, when you press J, it goes onto the last one of these that you had set. So I'm often using the patch tool as opposed to the spot healing brush, because if you use these, I wouldn't say carelessly, but haphazardly, they can still leave marks. They can sometimes be perfect, but they can leave marks. With the patch tool, you are deciding where you want that thing to be copied from. So that makes it pretty much invisible. But there is another thing, because sometimes, you know, if you're going into an area where you've got a nice empty bit that you want to copy from, let's, for example, say this, yeah? That's fine. Yeah, that works sort of okay. But then you come to this bit here. Do I go up? Do I go down? Is it going to be the same? Is it going to look like a repeat, which is a dead giveaway? You know, not sure. So you have another option, and this is a really, really good one. You press L for lasso. You lasso the bit in question. Okay. I've actually got it in a 0 pixel feather. You can have a small feather if you want. You right click within the selected area, you fill, and you do content aware. When you do fill, there's a drop down at the top. It could be black, grey, white, whatever, history, whatever. Content aware is the one you want. Okay, so you click on content aware, say okay, and hey presto, it's gone. And it doesn't give you, well actually there is a little bit of a repeat there if you look carefully. Okay?
Sorry, and if you click within the lasso, right?
Yes. You click within the selection. Now often what happens is that when you go to use the patch tool, for example, you haven't got an area to copy from. But what the content aware fill does is it can look at the surrounding area and fill within it, rather than copy from a specific other point, if that makes sense.
Annie?
You get what I mean? Any questions on that?
Yes. So if you were to remove that bit content aware to the right of the dog's ear, the white piece, there is a likelihood that it will take the dog's ear into consideration when it maps the background. How do you avoid that?
Yeah, well, look, there isn't a perfect solution for everything within Photoshop. Okay. What you have to do is use a little bit of one and a little bit of another. So for example, if I press L for lasso now, and I lasso this little bit here, okay? I right click within it, fill, it was on content aware before, so that's what comes up again. I say okay, it gets rid of that. That's sort of okay. I mean, my eyes are drawn to it. The problem that you have here is you've got the dog's hair there, okay? So there's other ways of doing it, okay? So I would probably press J for patch tool, select this bit around here, go up there, do that, okay? It hasn't done a particularly great job, but hey ho. But if I wanted to leave the dog's hair there, knowing that the dog's hair is dark, I would press S for stamp, I would select here, okay? Now if I just did that, I get rid of the dog's ear, the dog's hair, okay? Which is not what I want, okay? So I'll just undo that. I went Command Z twice to go back 2 steps. But if I click on the blend mode of this stamp brush, which is up here, and I go to darken, basically, if I press Alt and select this area here, anything that is darker than that area that I've selected is going to be darkened. Okay, but the dog's hair is even darker than that. So if I go over this, no, hasn't done a great job. Let me zoom in again. Turn the opacity down a little bit, but it's a little bit strong, right? If I go into that, there you go. So you can see that it's been darkened, but the hair is still there. And maybe That's all I need to do so that it's not too obvious.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So
I'm guessing when we were talking about cutting out, the way I've tried to do it is to cut the head out and then put it back in again. But trying to get those hairs without the background in, I find a nightmare. But that's another thing.
yeah, to be honest with you, cutting out, it's occasionally we do. Okay, occasionally we do, but it's quite a rare thing to do, as in to completely cut out a subject from a picture. Now, head swaps and that sort of thing is a different issue, but I can come to that in a bit if you want me to. Okay, so you've got to make life easy for yourself, because cutting out is quite a time-consuming process. Okay, so going back to this image, how to make it pop and how to make it look a little bit better. We'll get rid of all the distractions. I'm just going to press the patch tool and get rid of a few things here. Yeah, not absolutely everything, but things that are the brightest, like this little thing here. I don't know what it is. It's a bottle top or something. Yeah, it is.
Crap photographer should have spotted that.
Yeah, whatever. The thing is, it doesn't have to be perfect. You just got to make sure. And also, another thing, if I was going to patch from it, I wouldn't patch from this and go up here where it's out of focus. That's going to look ridiculous. You've got to go on the same plane of focus. Yeah? So it's going to be just as sharp wherever you're selecting from. Okay? So, again, this isn't particularly great, but it will do. Now, something else that I do, now I noticed this is an 8-bit file. Okay? Now, personally, I never ever work in 8-bit files when I'm doing my retouching. If I'm doing my previews, I do convert them to 8-bit because they're smaller and they're quicker to work with. But an 8-bit file has got 256 levels of brightness per color. Okay, 256. And what 8 bits means, let me just do this, and I'm going to share screen, and I'm going to go whiteboard, share. Okay, so when we start talking about levels of color, this is actually quite important. 1 bit is 1 times 1, and then you've got 2 times 1. No, 2 times 2, isn't it? That's 1. No, then it goes 2 times 1 is 2, and then 2 times 2 is 4, and then it goes 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Starts off from here, not from there. Okay, that's 8 bits. Okay, 16 bits is actually 256 times 256, and that gives you 65,000 whatever it is colors or tones. Okay, so that's actually quite important, because when you're working on an image and you've only got 256 levels of color or tones of color, sorry, levels of brightness per tone or per color, that isn't very much. So what happens is, if I go to vignette this, for example, there's a very strong chance of me creating banding. But if I've got 65,000 levels of brightness per color, that isn't going to happen. Okay, so whenever I'm working on pictures that I'm going to either supply as digital files or print, I work on them as 16-bit, and then the last thing I do is convert it to 8-bit, especially if you're going to send a JPEG. JPEGs are always 8-bit. Okay, JPEGs have only ever got 256 levels of brightness per color. So that way,
Penny.
Yeah.
So if you've got a JPEG, you convert it to 16-bit to edit and then convert it back to 8-bit. Do you lose loss of detail, quality, or et cetera, et cetera?
Okay, that's a good question. I want to go back to my to the whiteboard. Okay, so how do you erase here?
Please, sir.
But did you get
There's
the
got to be an
whiteboard
easier way.
from, Annie?
Right. So this is your 8-bit bucket, okay? And there's 256 levels or brightness levels within that for the pictures. This is 8-bit, okay? this is my 16-bit bucket. Now, this all gets pretty confusing because in actual fact, your cameras are usually 12-bit or thereabouts, okay? The sensor can only give 12 bits, but the 16-bit sort of color space, it's not a color space, that's the wrong terminology, but 16 bits has got the capacity to hold more than 8 bits. So in actual fact, a 12-bit file, which is what most sensors give, okay, will fill up this much of the bucket, okay? 250, so an 8-bit file is down here. So what you're doing is you're taking your 256 levels of brightness, chucking them in something that's got the capacity for 65,000, right? Working on it and putting it back again. Well, that's pointless. You convert it straight away from the raw file into 16-bit. Then you work on it, and the last thing you do is, if you're going to supply it as a digital file, is you convert it to 8-bit. If you're sending it off to a lab, you convert it to 8-bit, okay? Or you can some printers, like my printer, is it's capable of doing 16-bit. So I'll give you an example, okay? Yeah, sorry, my tea's just come from the loveliest person in the world. Thank you, darling. Okay, so I'm going to open a file that I've got here. So there's a raw file. Okay, so I shoot Canon. It's a .cr2 file. Nikon's is .nef. Sony is different. You know, all their different manufacturers have got their different codes for what the files are. Now, on my computer here, if I click on this line, so this is Camera Raw. For those of you that work on Lightroom, there is the same sort of thing. Okay, but within Adobe Camera Raw, this is how it looks, okay? Lightroom is probably similar, and you can click on this and you can see what's going to happen here. So color space, Adobe RGB. It's a big color space. It's not the biggest, but it's the most sensible one to use because everything is sort of accustomed to it. Depth, which is the bit depth. You choose 8 bits or 16 bits per channel, okay? So if you've ever seen these numbers, that come up. Let me just see if you do calculator. Just a minute. Right. Can you see the?
Yeah.
Where's the calculator gone? I can't see it. Ah, where is it?
Was bottom left for a minute.
There it is. Okay. So if you've got 256 levels of brightness per color, and then you've got 3 channels, haven't you? You've got red, green, and blue. So it's 256 times 256, 56 times, I've done that. Yes, 256. Oh, sorry.
65,536.
So 256 times 256 times 256 equals 16.7 million colours. Now, we've seen that touted about everywhere, and that's what TV's doing, all this sort of stuff. But if you've got a 256 times 256, which is the next thing, becomes 16-bit, you've got 65,000 levels per colour, and you multiply that by itself, and then again, you end up with 1.8, it's a stupid number, billions of colours that are capable of being reproduced. So you go into the Adobe color space, Adobe RGB, you go 16-bit, okay, and then you say, okay, so when you convert the image and you open it in Photoshop, it becomes 16-bit, okay? So somebody asked earlier on about what do you do about converting things to be ready for photo, or opening a raw file. So there's a number of things. The first thing you do is you remove chromatic aberration and you enable profile corrections. Okay, so did you see what happened there? If you look at the picture on the left-hand side here, you can't see it over here because it's completely blank. Look at the picture on the left-hand side here. Enable profile corrections. What's happening here? You have to do this on every single picture. This has to be a fixture, okay? Because our images, our lens is vignette. There's no two ways about it. You know, the bigger the aperture, the more the vignette. And they also have distortion, okay? So in other words, a straight line is going to end up curved towards the edges, and you get things like pincushion and barrel distortion, okay? Chromatic aberration is when you go to, especially where you have a dark, this is blurred so you can't see it so much. But often, no, you can't actually see it here. And you know, even though it's a shot of 3.5, you can't see it. If you've got a reasonably sharp contrast between black and white, you end up with fringing of magenta on one side and cyan on the other. And what that is that chromatic aberration. It basically means that the lens can't focus all the different color light rays on the same point, okay? Because we know that light rays work on different frequencies, okay? So what happens is, for example, it will focus the green perfectly, but the red is going to be slightly out of focus and the blue is going to be slightly out of focus. So what happens is you get a little blur on each side of that. In fact, bear with me a second. I might actually have a picture. Yeah, here. Here's a raw file. Okay. Right. So if I zoom into this, can everyone see this?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So we've got dark jeans on a white background. Can we see that little magenta fringe there?
Yeah.
Yeah. We can see that, can't we? And if I move along, on the other side, is that. Okay. So what you do, you go onto your lens corrections, okay, and you click remove chromatic aberration, and it's gone. Okay. Off. On. See that? Now, I learned this the painful way because I knew nothing about this. And I remember selling a 30 by 20 wall portrait in my venture studio a good few years ago. And it was a similar type of thing to this, where it was the family against a hard white background. And I had to go over every single edge and brush away the magenta on every person within the picture. But then you learn this in the click of a button, it's done. Okay, so you must remove chromatic aberration. Okay, and it doesn't matter, you know, what lens, what camera you use, they all have it. Okay.
Do you sorry, Pani, do you have to set that up for each lens, or does this just pick it up and do it?
Okay, that's a very good question. When you click on the next one, enable profile corrections, look what's happened. I haven't told Photoshop what I use, but within the metadata of the image file, it says that this picture was taken an ISO 400 with a 7200 lens at f5 at 160th of a second, okay? And it was a Canon lens, so it's there. There's a drop down, so I could choose a different one if I wanted to, but I've got the new Mark III, and it says the profile is of that lens. So basically, Adobe has obtained all the information from Canon and from Nikon and from Sony and from Pentax and every other manufacturer, and they put the information in, so they know that if, for example, you're using a 7200 lens at 150 millimeters, they know it's got so much distortion. At a given aperture, it's got that much vignetting, and so they correct it automatically. But you must only do this with the original raw file. Do not crop it and do it, because it cocks things up completely. Okay? You've got to do it on the raw file, untouched. Okay? Now, there is a problem between Fuji and Adobe, And if you've got a Fuji camera, it quite often doesn't pick up what camera or lens you're using. Okay, so that's just a by the by. Is everyone happy with that?
Fine. So, Pani, when you do the viewing, you just work from the JPEG files to create a viewing set. But then when they order, you go back and do everything from the raw file. Is that correct?
Exactly right. Exactly right. Yeah. And to be honest, a lot of people say, oh, I've got to get the pictures perfect for the viewing. You don't. You absolutely don't. I mean, I do instant viewings, okay? So I do instant viewings, and I have absolutely no concern about what the pictures look like on the screen, because I say to them, what you're looking at here is straight out of camera, unretouched, unprocessed, undone. What you're paying me for is to redo the pictures and make them look absolutely perfect. And you will see that they're going to be perfect when you get them. Yeah. Okay. So going back,
you do one picture just to show them as an example.
No, I mean, obviously, I don't have it completely. You know, I won't show them something like this. You know, it's going to be, you know, reasonably close to what it should be. But I'm not anal about it by any means. Okay. All right. So going back to this, we do these things, and I was going to use this picture as a bit of an example. We sort that out. To be honest, on my screen it looks a little bit dark. I was looking at this picture earlier on my other computer, and it didn't look quite so bad. I up the shadows a little bit to get a bit more detail in the blacks. Okay. If there's highlights, I'll come to this in a minute. If there's highlights, you know, to be honest, the skin tones are quite okay on this. There are a number of things I could do in this, but I'll do it in Photoshop. I'll open the image and I'll explain my thought processes when I'm creating pictures. And this is important so that we know how our eyes go across the picture. Now, can everyone see this? Yeah. Yep. Okay. Now, one of the things I don't ever do is crop in Camera Raw or in Lightroom. Because when you crop within Lightroom, okay, if I want to straighten this up, what happens is it ends up cropping, the picture goes within this boundary, okay? But in Photoshop, what you can do is you can, if you want to straighten something up quickly, by the way, you click on the straighten thing, and this will work either horizontally or vertically. So I'll click on here, drag it down to there, align it with the edge of the wall, okay? Let go, and it straightened it. But notice it's cut a little bit off. So it's cut a little bit off there, and cut a little bit off there, but I'm going to expand it, okay? And so although there's whites around there, if I click on content aware, which is our little friend from earlier on, okay? If we click on that, when I double click inside the frame now, what it's going to do is not just straighten the picture, but it's going to look at the surrounding areas and add bits of information down the bottom, okay? So in actual fact, I'm creating a bigger file than what I started off with, okay? Is everyone aware of that one?
Nope.
I knew you could do it, I just didn't know where it was.
Okay. So it takes a little while, and then it's done. So it's filled in all the gaps, and that is perfectly sharp. Okay, so I want to make this picture look a little bit better. What I have to do is analyze it in my head. Now, in the old days, what professional retouchers would do, they'd make a very quick print of something, and then they'd start drawing all over it. This needs doing, that needs doing, this is too dark, that's too bright. We've got to sort this out and that. Now, the first thing that happens in this picture is our eye gets pulled into this white area. So I want to get rid of it. Now, how do I get rid of it? Do I, for example, click B for brush, press Alt, sample that color, and then fill it in? It's doable. In fact, that's not too bad at all. Yeah. My preference, because sometimes it gets lighter and darker at the top or the bottom. So my preference is to do this. I press M for marquee. In fact, the first thing I'm going to do is press S for stamp. Okay. I select, that's the ear of the dog from earlier on. I just want to lighten this area up here in the corner. That's on darken, which is silly, normal, even 49% fine. Okay. Right, so I press M for marquee, I select this area, I copy, I paste, so I press Command C, Command V to paste, Command T to transform. I bring this over here, okay? I double click it, so it's there. I press the blend mode of this layer to darken, okay? And it's already done most of the work for me. What I then do is I click on the Japanese flag down here, which is the mask. Click on that. It's white. So for me to make a difference to this picture, I need a black brush. I press B for brush. Make sure it's black, because I can see in this little window down here, the top one is the color that it is. Opacity is 100%, flow's 100%. And I just go over his arm there, okay? And it goes from that to that. Now, if I'm looking at that picture, my eye isn't drawn to the right-hand side of the frame, okay? And it's the same color as the rest of the wall. Okay, we know there's a little bit of a gap there, but we can sort that out later. All right, so that's step one. Then I'm looking at the picture, and let's do that little trick that we did earlier. I'm going to press Command J just for a new layer, R for rotate. Right, I would like your comments, please. What is the brightest part of the picture?
The woman's eyes.
The woman, what, her face?
Yeah.
Her chest.
Her chest. Definitely her chest. So her chest is the brightest part of the picture. So I'm going to press Escape. I press M for my key. Actually, I'm going to flatten that. I'm going to run my little action, which I've shown you before, I think. The lighten and darken.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, where is it? I've got it down here.
It's only gone.
There it is. Okay. So what I do now, what this does, the darken, the blend mode of this layer is multiply. Darken is multiply. The lighten is screen. Okay. I made an inverted mask. In other words, that is actually darker. This, that layer is darker, but I've made it invisible by putting a black mask on it. So I need to use a brush. That's B for brush that I just pressed. I press X because I've got to turn the brush the opposite of that, so it makes a difference. I turn the opacity of the brush down to about 10%. And then I go to the brightest part of the picture and I brush it on. Now, there are photographers that prefer, or retouchers that prefer to use opacity at 100% and flow at like 1 or 2%. You do whatever you want. This is the way I prefer it. Okay, it works both ways. But I know that every time I click and repress on it, okay, I'm adding another 10% of darkness, and I'm never going to go out of range. So if I do that, now you do it and you think, is that enough? I'm not sure. So you just turn the eye on and off, and you can see all of a sudden, that actually has quite a difference. Okay. Now, other things that I'm noticing, his face is sort of bright here, but sort of dark here. Okay. His arm. What is that thing there? Why have I got a yellow mark on there?
I noticed that earlier.
Touched it before you flattened it. Before you flattened it, it appeared.
No, it moves. When you move the screen, the yellow dot stays where it is.
That's really weird.
Oh, is it from the whiteboard left over on your screen?
It could be. It could be. So ignore that. Anyway, it is quite a distraction though. So another thing that I've noticed is that his arm actually is looking a bit bright. So I'm going to darken that down as well. Okay. I'm still going to leave some shape in it. I'm going to press light and go in the middle, but I'm going to darken it on the edges, a little bit darker there. All right. Okay. So now I press on the lighten button, and I'm going to lighten this side of his face. Okay. Right. And maybe just lighten her face that side. Now, if I'm looking at it more closely, I actually notice that her face is actually quite bright as well. Okay. So I do that, do that, do that. There we go. All right. So if I now zoom out a tad and I go to the group there and I turn that on and off, it's actually made quite a difference. Notice how our eyes are being pulled to where we want them to be going. Yeah. Okay. Right. Anybody got any questions about this?
How do you do that with the dog?
I'll show you.
You don't. The dog can't hold the mouse.
Right. Oops, wrong one. So with the dog, okay. So I'm going to do the same thing. I go onto my actions. I go to lighten and darken. And I come over here. I go to darken. I zoom in. And I'm going to make the brush smaller. There we go. I'm going to darken this area around here. Yeah. I'm going to darken the fur here and his paws, which are reflecting a little bit of light. Okay. But what I am going to do is I'm going to, it does look a bit odd. I mean, it's quite cute, but it looks a bit odd. This eye I find is a bit too dark for the image. So I'm just lightening the eye a little bit. Okay. Now, you always got to zoom out and see it there. There you go. All right. So I've darkened that. The other things I would do, I'm going to do a bit of vignetting a bit later. I would darken the area just immediately behind the dog. I'm going to darken this, but I'm going to vignette it as well. All right. So,
would you darken that light piece in the top of the picture?
I would, but I'll do that in vignetting. Okay. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to merge visible. So just Command Shift E. So it flattens everything. I'm going to do Command J, stick it on a new layer. And this is what was asked before about camera raw filter. So you can go into filter, camera raw filter. Now I use this an awful lot, and I've got used to pressing Command Shift A. Okay. And I go straight into camera raw filter. So basically what happens here, I've clicked on it. It's opening it up in camera raw filter. And there it is. Now the display here looks exactly like it did earlier when I was opening that raw file. Okay? So there is a difference. In actual camera raw, what you're looking at here is a color temperature in Kelvin. This just goes plus and minus from 0. Yeah, so it can go very, very yellow to very, very blue. Yeah. And then 0, I just press 0 on the keyboard and it puts me there. Okay. So this is what I was saying about, if you work on an 8-bit file, this may not work as well. So what I would do, I'd make the picture a bit smaller and I press the radial filter. This, in my experience, is the best way to vignette. Radial filter. Okay. I press, every time you click the plus and the minus, it goes up in half-stop increments on the exposure, okay? So I click it 4 times and I go to -2. I have this set so that it's working on the outside, yeah? So if I do this, okay, the effect is on the outside or the inside, okay? I want it on the outside. Now, I put this on a new layer when I was in Photoshop, so I can adjust this afterwards anyway. So what I do, and this is the benefit of doing it, in fact, when the picture's a bit smaller, it's easier to work out where the vignette is. You can see where the lighter bits and the darker bits are very, very easily, okay? So I want to make sure that the light bit at the top up there isn't too bright. I want to come down, I might make this a little bit smaller, a bit narrower, okay? And then I keep it about there. So I say, okay, right? So before, after. Before, after. You can notice your eyes being squeezed into the center of the frame. But has it made the dog darker? I'm not sure, it may have done. So what you do now again is press on the mask, okay? It's a white mask, therefore I need a black brush to erase it. So I press X on the keyboard, okay? Or I could click this button here, yeah? And then I make sure I'm on brush, I press B, and let me put that to 100%, and a reasonably large brush, and I just make sure that I haven't done anything to the dog, okay? Now, if I find that certain bits are still too dark, I can either turn the opacity of the brush down and then, lighten them if I want to, yeah? Or I can turn the opacity of the layer down so that it's not creating as much of an effect. So it doesn't matter if you go into Camera Raw filter and you overdo it a little bit. You can scale it back in here, and you can brush in and brush out the bits that you either want or don't want the vignette to apply on. But I think this works reasonably well. Okay, so if it was me, yeah, I might turn it down a little bit. Yeah. I'd say about there. I still find this little bit above the dog's head is a little bit dark, in which case I might run the action again with the lighten and darken. So I'm going to do that. I'm just going to, and this is the benefit of the action. You just click a button. There we go, it's done. Get that out of the way. Go onto there, darken. This little bit, if I keep the opacity of that brush to about 10%, I'm only adding little bits of darkening at a time. Yeah, big brush. Then I'm going to go up here. Okay. So if we go to here, before and after. I mean, I haven't done it particularly well, I have to be honest. I'm a bit ashamed of it, to be honest with you. But you understand what I mean. Yeah?
Making Phil's photography look stunning.
All right.
Need somebody to do it, I can't.
So if I now go back to the original picture, okay, that's original, that's now. Yeah? But there is more we can do to it. Okay? So I'm going to press Command J to make another layer. I'm going to go back into Camera Raw filter, Command Shift A. I find that when you're taking pictures of dogs, okay, you can add sharpening, and that's a little bit too much, I think. Well, not too much. It can work very, very well, but most of the time, all you need to do is add a little bit of clarity. If I add a lot, you can see it's gone really rough. Okay, rough dog. Okay, if you push it up to about 20, 30, 40, yeah, it actually makes the dog, it sharpens it, but it adds what they call mid-range. You can see there's a little red bit there in the eye. That's just where it's going out of range. That's fine. I don't mind specular highlights like that. Okay, so if I say okay to that, then you go, but it's made the whole picture on the outside look very grainy as well. Well, that's absolutely right. So what do? Mask. Invert the mask. So I've got a white mask. I want to do Command I, so I make that whole thing invisible. I have a white brush. I put it to 100%, and I just apply it to the dog. So I've still got that lovely smooth effect that the out of focus area is giving me in the background. But now, hopefully you can see that. Now, I've added that. It's almost like sharpening, but not quite. It does a much more gentle effect, in my opinion.
Annie, can we talk about the mask afterwards?
Yeah, well, what do you want to know?
When you created a mask,
yeah,
like you see, we can see there, layer one, copy one. When you flatten the image, that mask disappears. Or if you want to keep that mask, what do you do? Save it as a PSD and then flatten it afterwards, so to get an extra file.
What I don't. Why? Explain your thought process a bit more to me.
So if we wanted to come back into that picture again and reuse the mask or make another adjustment like you just did,
yeah,
you haven't. If you flatten the image, you haven't got that mask anymore, have you?
That's right. Yeah.
So would you say, just in case, would you save it as a PSD or something to keep a mask there?
Well, you could do, but what I ask myself is that better than before? Would I want to go back? You know, arguably I could say, oh, you know what, it's a little bit too strong. I'm going to drop the opacity down, you know, to about 50%. So yes, it's making it sharper, but not quite as much as it did before. Yeah. But the way I look at it, and it also depends on your computer. You know, I mean, this is a MacBook Pro. I've got, you know, a reasonable amount of RAM on it. What is it, 16? I've got 16 gig of RAM, and it's a reasonably fast processor. It's a bit of an old computer. My other one, you know, I've got 256 gig of RAM, so I can put as many layers as I want on it. It's not going to make a slight bit different. and I've got, you know, a pretty fast processor. But most of us tend to work on computers that can't quite handle that much. So if you're working on numbers of layers, it becomes a little bit of an issue, and it can really slow your machine up and slows your workflow up. So the way I look at it is, if I've done something and I'm 100% sure I'm not going to want to go back, I'll flatten it. That's my opinion. Other people have different ideas, but that's the way I work.
It's a temporary nature. You can copy a merged image, creating another layer for the moment until you're happy that because you may want to do further work to it, and you can keep doing that. But as you say, Penny, that makes the file larger.
Yeah, it does. It makes it considerably larger. I mean, look, to be honest, it depends on how far you want to go. You know, so what I've shown you just now is a nice way of working. It's a simple, quick way of working. You know, we haven't got time to be doing, you know, fantastic, amazing retouches on every single picture that we're going to show our clients, especially if we're doing viewings another time and, you know, they might not be buying the pictures. You know, you spend 2 hours making an amazing preview of 20 or 30 or 40 images and they buy one picture. Well, you just wasted your time. Yeah. And that's one of the benefits I have for doing instant viewings. You know, I only work on pictures that are actually being paid for and bought, which is a workflow thing, but just saying. Okay. So anyway, going back to the original question, I'll keep that mask for as long as I think it's necessary. If personally, I'm not going to go back from that. I think that looks much better. So I'm just going to go Command E, which drops it down to the next layer. So what I did, by the way, a couple of steps ago, I went back to the original file, which was that. And I went up to where we were. Hello. What happened here? I went back to where we were. And then so that's where we were, that's the original file. And that's what we've done up to now. So you can see now that hopefully, I'd like to think that most of us think that it's enhanced the picture somewhat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Phil, are we happy with that?
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Okay.
Compared to what I had done before.
Much better than you've ever seen, Phil, isn't it?
You want to see what I've got on my screen here? Or maybe you don't.
Can I ask a super quick question?
Yes.
When you're creating your lighten and darken layer masks, how do you invert the layer mask?
Command I.
Command I, thank you. And just click on it and Command I, is that right?
Yeah. So now I can make so there's a mask.
Yeah.
That's a regular mask.
Yeah.
So now if I want to, so this is what I've got. So this is the effect that I've got. If I want to take anything of that away, I have a black brush. Okay.
Yeah.
If I have it 100%, I can just do that. Okay.
Yeah.
Command Z to undo. If I have an inverted mask, I press Command I and it goes black.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
The top layer, what I did before, you know, everything that we've done has disappeared. It will only reappear if I click the brush that is an opposite color.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Then I can do that. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. So
that's a basic adjustment layer, is it? You just put on there.
No, this is an adjustment layer. So the half moon, this one here, is an adjustment layer. This is a layer mask. So the Japanese flag, this one here, can you see what I'm pointing at, by the way?
Yeah.
Yes.
So that is a mask. So basically what that does is it either makes a mask that is black or white. If you press Alt and then press the mask, it creates an inverted mask straight away. Okay, if I press Command I now, which is what I told Morag, it goes white again. For me to allow the effect on this layer to disappear with a white mask, I have to have a black brush. Okay, and there it is. I'm putting back everything that we took out, and you can see the effect there. If I do Command I, it's done the exact opposite. So that's a layer mask. It is much better than doing things and erasing them and whatever. Okay? Okay? It's much better than deleting something. You create a layer mask, you brush it in, you brush it out. Okay. If you remember, do you remember we did the chins last time?
Yeah.
That was on a mask. Okay. So just, I'm doing Command J just to show you. I mean, no one's got a chin of note here, but still. I press L for lasso. I'll do that. Copy. Command C. Paste. Command V. I've got a new layer. Okay. Then I do a mask. Okay. And with a black brush, oh, sorry. So I'm back on here. Now I do Command T to transform. Right click, warp. Lift it up a little bit. Okay. So now that's what I've done. Okay. But I go to the mask and with a black brush at 100, so B for brush, 100% black brush, I'm erasing away. I'm going to be erasing away the bits that I don't want. Okay. Yeah. And then all I do is I soften the edge with a black brush with a soft edge so that nobody can see a hard line in that. And I've got rid of his chin. Yeah. So, but the mask is very different to the adjustment layer. An adjustment layer, you can do brightness and contrast levels, curves, exposure, all the stuff that we were talking about before, okay, on a separate layer. Okay, so let me just to stop confusion. So that's that done. Okay, I press E, I'm saving it. Command E, it's gone into the layer below. So there, that's before and after. Okay, if I do an adjustment layer and I want to do, for example, brightness and contrast, it's now added a layer. Well, it's a sort of mask. Yes, it is, I suppose. But what I'm doing is I'm putting an adjustment on that to make it all contrastier and brighter. Okay. Now what I can do, if I wanted to, in a similar sort of way, I suppose, is I could turn that, if I go Command I, it's now gone invisible. I press B for brush, and X to make it a white brush. I can now add that onto their faces if I want to. I'm just brushing in where I want that effect to take place. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah. But this is an adjustment layer. Whereas this, what I did here, was I masked it. So whatever effect I've got on there can either be there and erased or not there and added in, depending on if I've got a black or a white mask. You do have to do it to get used to it. It's one of those things where you need to do it repeatedly and then you get the hang of it and then it becomes automatic. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. Okay? All right. So that's that. I want to go on to, gee, is it 12 o'clock?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Selena sent this picture in.
Can I just say that Selena's asked a question which you might be able to put onto this picture, Pani. How do you extend the backgrounds when doing the family group as well? So you might be able to use that on this one.
How to extend the background?
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So firstly, Selena's original question for this was puppet warp. Now, I have to be honest, puppet warp isn't something I use regularly. In fact, I've hardly ever used it. There are things that I use within the liquefy side of things, and that's what we can do to sort this out. Now, just as a critique, okay, the lighting on this baby, oops, the lighting, by the way, is a giveaway. By the way, it's a very sharp image. It's lovely. You know, getting the baby there is great. Got the eyes open at this stage is really, really good. There's a few things I would do to change this picture, but the lighting on this is a bit flat. There's no real shadows in the picture, and you can see from the lighting pattern. There's a light, you know. There's I don't know, a beauty dish or a spotlight, not spotlight, a softbox over here on the left hand side, and a rectangular one on the right hand side. I would probably have the light coming more from the left to make it look like it's coming onto the face and creating a shadow that way. But that's that. So it's also cropped a little bit tight. If I was taking pictures like this, which I do quite often, I would make sure that the background here goes all the way up, okay? Because again, our eyes are being pulled up. And it's too much like hard work to actually replicate this and fill it all the way across here. It's not worth the effort, okay? So I would shoot a little bit looser and sort things out that way. So what I would do here is C for crop, okay? I think it's cropped to a 7:5, this one. Yeah, okay. Again, by doing, now, I would crop it, oops, sorry, 7:5. Okay, I would crop it, giving a little bit more space left and right, okay? And I always try to have the baby's head a little bit higher than its bottom. This is personal preference, but to me, it transforms the picture. So if I do this and make it a little bit bigger, and I click on content aware up here, okay, I don't need, and I double click inside, I don't need to be filling in those areas. Okay, give it a couple of seconds. And there we go, right? So that, to me, that's improved it already, okay? Couple of things I would do. So I'd do Command J. I'd go into the liquify tool, so you can go to filter, filter, liquify. Again, because I use it an awful lot, I do Command Shift X, which is what the shortcut is there, okay? So click on that, takes into liquify, there we are. Now, there's a couple of things about babies that our eye picks up on certain things, okay? And we need to take away elements that make the picture look, that our eye gets drawn to, okay? So, for example, baby's leg looks a little bit thin, the little creases here, that line looks a little bit irregular. I would straighten that up a little bit, okay? I'd make the brush a bit bigger, turn my pressure up a little bit. I would push the baby's back down there, make the bottom a little bit bigger, okay? Now, there is something else I'd do with the liquify tool. Now, remember, we've got, you can, just wait for that, you've got the freeze mask and the thaw mask. The freeze mask means it's not going to touch anything in a particular area. So if I do this, it isn't going to touch anything around here, okay? Now, I don't happen to like, and in fact, I don't want to touch his eye either, okay? So now, whatever I do isn't going to be affected by the brushes that I'm going to use, okay? So I'm going to push this down a little bit and push that up a little bit. Push it down a little bit, push it up a little bit. Okay. And then if I do the thaw mask, basically means I get rid of what I've done there. Okay, so if I press preview before and after, okay, and then you zoom out a little bit, it actually makes things look a little bit more natural, yeah? So we're looking at the whole of the baby's shape, it's looking a little bit better, okay? And we say okay to that. So that's before, make it a bit bigger. Before, after, okay? All right, now, something else I do, I'm going to press Command J to make it a different layer, is sort out the redness here. Now, just something to bear in mind, quite often, this coloration that we get here is because the baby's circulation isn't great. Their leg's been squashed a little bit too long, so you've got to be careful of that, all right? But the way to get rid of this is you can press Command. You can actually do this on a layer mask, but I just do, no, actually what I'm going to do, I'm going to lasso it. I did do Command J, but I won't lasso it. So I'm going to lasso it, okay? I'm going to press Command C, Command V. I've pasted it, so that's basically what I'm going to be working on, okay? I press Command U, which is the hue and saturation, I'm going to go to the reds. Okay. Now, when I enable a colour, you'll notice that if it's on master, these eyedropper things are greyed out. If I click on a colour, they become visible and active. So now, rather than just me working randomly on the reds, I can actually say, actually, you know what? I want to work on this specific colour. So I click plus, and I will click on the baby's red foot. Okay. Then what I can do is I can adjust the hue. Now, if I wang it too far over one way and then the other, you'll see what it does. Right? That's going green, and that's going purple. Okay? In actual fact, what I want to do is turn it a little bit green. Okay? So I'm just looking at the baby's foot. Okay? So I've gone there. I want to turn the saturation down a little bit. Okay? And then I want to turn the lightness up a little bit. Okay? So I say okay to that. Now if I press that on and off and zoom in a little bit, that yellow line is really distracting me, but still. So before, after. Now, if I now mask that, and I press B for brush, and I go X to make a black brush, it's on 100%, I make the brush the right size, I can erase it off of the baby's bottom. Okay, if I want to see the edges, oops, I just moved it. Yeah, you can see that that is better. Now, if I think, actually, you know what, it's looking too yellow, well, what I can do, because it's on a separate layer, I can drop the opacity. If I turn the opacity down to 0, it's going back to what it was before. But if I put it up to, I don't know, 70, 80%, it isn't too bad. And if you look at the picture, now we know we've done something to it, and we expect the feet to be slightly different. But by doing this, we've stopped people going, oh, his foot's a bit red. Yeah. You stop looking at it so much. Now, you can add a bit of contrast and do a few other little bits and pieces to it as well. But that's generally what I do there. Okay. Any questions about that?
Nope, nothing's come up.
Okay, that's fine. So are we happy with that? I wanted to ask Selena, is there anything else you had in mind about this picture that you wanted to do? If she's there?
Yeah, she is there, but she probably will write it in the chat room rather than...
Okay. Okay.
No, sorry, no, I've got it on mute. It was just that I've seen in forums, I mean, I don't particularly do this pose. This was one that I did years and years ago. But I've seen in forums that they've used puppet warp and where they sort of like, you know, itch the bottom end up or the head up. And I think it's similar to what you've done in Liquidify.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I tend not to use puppet. I know that there's a lot of these baby pictures where they've got the baby's body going in one direction and their head twisted completely. It almost looks like they've got a broken neck. I must say, I do find that a little bit funny sometimes, a bit odd. But I think with Liquify, you can do an awful lot. You know, I think the key is get it right first and then play around with it afterwards. But certainly, you know, with this picture, what I'd be doing is...
Pani, can I just say something about Liquify for anyone that hasn't used it?
Yeah.
You often see people that drag too big a section. So the way Pani did it was obviously tiny little bits at a time and doing opposing things as well, whereas some people just drag it from one place to another and you see, and it's not until you zoom in, you see all these sort of stretch marks across the picture. So yeah. Just be careful if you haven't used it before, be aware of it. Sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. So actually, you know what? I'm just going to very quickly go back to this picture. Now, this is a picture that I started off, you know, we started off working with. I have actually done a picture that I played around with and did. So if I break the command A, can see. Go back to that. Oh, I cropped it a little bit, I think. So that is what I ended up with. If you look at her hair, yeah, that was all done in Liquify. What we look for, our eyes go straight to irregularities, okay? Now, if you compare that to that, I know there's a slight movement. I've got rid of the little peak in her hair. I've smoothed the shape of the hair out. You know, I've tied all those things up, and it just makes for a much, much more pleasing photo, yeah? All right, so that's just something to bear in mind, okay? There was another question that we had at the beginning about how do I tidy up a white background. Okay, let me see if I can. I didn't have a white background picture. 1 second, bear with me. I'll just see if I can find one from the shoot that I did recently. Oops. Sorry. Oh. Did I do white background? No, I didn't. No. Yeah, oh, here we go. Oh, it's that same family. There we go. White background. Okay. So.
That's a normal thing we get, isn't it? With the line across the middle of the back.
Okay. So there's a couple of ways of doing it. Okay. Now, personally, I don't mind the line across the back. Now, obviously, I wasn't holding it straight. So the first thing I do for this picture, C for crop. It's a 3:2 ratio, that way around. So what I would do, the straighten tool, I'd go from there to there. It straightened it out for me. Like I said before, you can expand, so you can create more pixels left and right, enabling content-aware crop. And then I start off with a picture that I know looks dead level, okay? So I'll show you a couple of little tricks. If you light the area evenly, this can work hugely in your favor. It doesn't always work though, because if we're lighting generally from one side, it can be lighter on the background on one side in comparison to the other. So, okay, so you can see here that it's actually lighter over here, darker over here. All right, so if we zoom in and we look at the floor, you can see there are irregularities, there are, you know, a few things. I think that if you take away that line, okay, it can look like they're floating in midair. So I don't personally mind it. So the first thing I'm going to do, I create a new layer, Command-Shift-A, Camera Raw Filter, okay? I want to make sure the background is as even as possible. And again, this is really easy to do, to lighten this side in comparison to that side. I press the graduated filter, plus half a stop, come in from the right, okay, and I've already balanced it out there so that it looks a little bit brighter, yeah? And it does a real nice smooth. If I did it with a brush, it would never graduate as well, okay? So that's that. Now here's a nice little trick. Now often, some people say, oh, I know what you could do. I'll blur the background to smooth away any of the bits and pieces on the floor here. Okay, to be honest, that isn't too bad, really. But, right. Okay, so what you could do is you could go filter, blur, Gaussian blur, okay? And you blur the background out, you say, okay, right? And then you can mask it, okay? B for brush, black brush, 100%, and brush it away. Okay?
Yeah.
So that's what some people do. But then you always have this hazy bit, yeah, down near the fingers and the toes and where the clothes are. So that's what some people do. And if we look at the background there, if you look here, if you look around here, that's you can see there's a few bits there and whatever. And then you press the blur and it's disappeared, okay? And it's still got that line at the back, which, as I said, personal preference, I don't mind it, okay? And by the way, I never go for a white background. If you look at this, again, if I click on there and I look at the RGB, it's coming out 235, 237, which is absolutely fine for me, okay? Now, another way of doing it is, as I said, another way of doing it, because here what happens is you end up, the blur, it splurges over, and it can be quite difficult to get a nice smooth transition from the background, which has been blurred, to where the subject is. So what you can do instead of that, okay, is this. Instead of going to blur, you go into filter, noise, medium. Okay, make a note of that. Noise medium. Now this is quite a processor hungry process. Okay. So what you do is you blur it, but look at what happens. It makes the blur, but it doesn't give you that big haloing effect going into the background. It cuts the person out much more nicely. Okay. So I say okay to that, and I do the same thing. I just mask it. B for brush, and then erase it. But you can go much tighter without the risk of any smudges at the end. Yeah. So there you go. So I've turned the layers at the bottom off, and I can see, if I see any details there, it means I've got to get rid of them. Okay, so that's how I tidy it. Now there is another way of doing it. Okay, and this is where you have to make sure that your light in the background is quite even. So new layer, alpha lasso. Oops, sorry. Now I often have a problem with. Oh, actually, I won't do this, alpha lasso. No, here's another way. People are asking about cutouts. You click onto this, okay, which is the quick selection tool. Click on that, and then there's a thing up here that says select subject. Okay, you click on it, give it a little bit of time, and it picks them out. Now, it hasn't done a great job because you've got white on white, but if I press on B for brush, no, I won't go B for brush. I'm going to go on alpha lasso. You can, and you click on this one up here. So with the lasso, you've got the regular lasso. You can add to it with this. You can make a differentiation here and subtract from there. So I want to go and add on there. So I'll just go around that, and I've basically added to the selection there, and I'll add a little bit more to there. Just want to make sure I haven't missed anything. Okay. So now I can go copy.
Shoulder on the left. Shoulder on the left now.
Oh yeah, sorry, beg your pardon. Okay. All right. In fact, I'm going to give it a little bit more. Okay. So you can do that. I'll press copy. All right, Command C. All right, so I've copied it. It's in the clipboard. And now what I can do, and this is if you want to go for a perfect background, there's a bit of irregularity going on around there. Okay. Now what you can do is you can right click, fill. Now this is a bit counter opposite to what we were doing before. Content aware fill. So what's going to happen now is it's going to fill them with the white area around them. Hasn't done a fantastic job, it doesn't really matter. What I now do is press Command A, select all, filter, blur, and I go to average. So what it's done, it's looked at all the pixels within the whole of the frame, and it's given me an average of everything. And then I just go Command V. And I've got a perfectly smooth, clear background. But like I said before, because it hasn't got that bit in the background there, it looks like they're floating in midair. Okay? So theoretically, I could blend them into that layer. That's before, that's after. No, I haven't put them in the same place. Actually, no, what I'm going to do. Okay. That's what I did. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to mask. So I'm not going to paste them on. So they're in exactly the same spot. I'm going to mask that. B for brush, black brush, and I'm just going to expose them underneath. Now, if I had irregular lighting on the background, it would have made my life much more difficult. Okay, but this gives me a background that is completely smooth. Okay, and then what I could do, I can turn the opacity of my brush down a little bit, and I go to the background, and I can bring back that line just in the back there, so I can see it. But it smoothed out everything here. Yeah, made the background much smoother. Does that help?
Yeah, thanks.
Any questions about that? Crikey's gone really quiet. I'm going to stop sharing.
Yeah, no, there's no questions showing.
I've got a question, but it's not about this. So whenever I was waiting till you'd finished all what you were doing.
Yeah,
so if it's not about that, do you know why, whether it's Camera Raw or Lightroom, Adobe still doesn't recognize Olympus lenses? Any idea?
I think it probably goes back to the question, to the thing I said earlier about Fuji as well. If I've got any Fuji images, I can never find the lens that I've shot with. I can't find the camera or the lens that I've shot with.
Yet it says the focal length, it says the aperture, everything else, but you can't find Olympus or any of those lenses in any of the drop downs. Yeah, okay, no, I didn't know if you knew.
No, I don't think so. It might be, I mean, I don't know if you're into it, but maybe Capture One might have it if you've got Capture One.
Yeah, no, I haven't. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Selena asked, how do you extend the backgrounds when doing a family group as well, please? I think the content aware crop is the way to extend the background. Yeah. So does anybody else have any other questions about either anything we've covered so far or something that's on the top of their mind and they'd like to ask?
Gone very quiet, Pani.
I know. Crikey, what's going on?
Because our minds are just working overtime now. That's why.
Why? What have I done?
Yeah. Where do I start?
Go on.
Everybody's been busy writing down notes, Pani, and now they're seeing that their shorthand isn't that good.
Okay.
They got command.
Leslie's talking, but he's on mute.
All right, come on, Les, talk to us.
Sorry about that. I didn't realise I'm mute. No, as I say, I think we're going to have to look back on the YouTube channel to re-go over it again with the computer running and doing them like step by step, because it is complicated. Once you learn them, it's straightforward. It's like pressing I to invert something.
Yeah, Command I.
Command I. But if you're not, or Control I, but if you're not used to doing that, you lose it. And I've got a whole list of the shortcuts that you've just given us as well. So I'll be practicing all those, but I will run the video and run a program so we can do it. And that's the only way you do it. It's like you say, you've got to do it to learn it.
Yeah. Remember, when you do Command I, you've got to be on the layer mask, otherwise it will turn the picture into a negative.
Oh, yeah.
You mustn't be on the photo, because, right, let me just quickly, I'll quickly change this one sec. Okay, so this isn't a great example. Let's go to, yeah, all right, we'll do this one. So if I've got a layer mask there, okay, it's there. So it's white, so we can see that layer. And then if I brush in black, it will go down to what was done before, okay? Now, if I press Command-I, it's turned it black, the top layer becomes invisible, and with a white brush, I would brush in what's on this top layer.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, if I'm accidentally on here, in other words, on the photo instead of the mask, and I press Command-I, oh, it's invisible. That's what happens.
Oh, that's an award winner.
Yeah, so you've got to be on the mask to turn it
Right.
the opposite. Okay.
There you go, Phil.
What's that?
That's how to improve your pictures.
I missed it. Sorry, I was just.
All right. So you've got to be on the mask and invert it. Okay. All right.
Right. As another question came in.
Is everything okay there?
Yep. Another question come in from Janet Young. On large groups, if your subjects have overlapped your background, how can you fill in the background around them? You will probably say get a bigger studio. But I know, you know, so in other words, if you've got a couple of people that have maybe gone out past the paper roll or something like that, so you've got the edge of the roll of the paper coming down somebody's arm. I think that's what you mean, Janet, is it?
Yeah, I've had that problem.
So you've run out of stuff. Yeah, right, okay.
Yes.
Okay, so say that again. When they're over, so their shoulder goes beyond
the end of your background, so it's showing whatever's past the background, really.
You've got a black wall, white background paper, and their shoulder is going across the paper onto the black or whatever colour the background your wall is.
Okay. Yeah, the thing to do the thing that you can do is I have that a lot. Now I did a shoot. It's funny that I did a shoot about 5 years ago, and I contacted my customers, and I said, "Do you want to buy your old digital files?" And they said, "Yeah." And I didn't realise that some of their pictures I took because I've got a patio door right here on my studio, and they were stood just inside the patio door. And it was before I got my battery-operated lights, which are over there. Yeah. So there was wires all over the place. And I had people stood there right in front of the patio door, and there was lights and things behind their heads and everything. So what I did, I photographed the background only in a similar kind of light on its own with nobody there. And I used that as a background. And I copied that picture where their arms would be overlapping the black background, for example, onto that white background. And then I use a mask, and you can brush it in. Now, if the background over the majority of them matches the background that you took a picture of to replace it, and that's the best way of doing it rather than just getting a brush, then all you have to do is work around the edge of the shoulder, for example, that overlap the background. Okay, let me see. Have I got it here? Jeez. No, I haven't got it on this. Unfortunately, I don't have it on this computer. Sorry, I would have shown you that. I don't have many. Now, I have to be honest, that's one of the reasons why I've used I use quite wide background rolls, but I do know the problem quite well. I'm just trying to think, have I got any pictures? Bear with me. Well, actually, here we go. It's a bit opposite to what I was saying. Okay, it's similar. It's a similar kind of shot to the one that we dealt with earlier. Okay, but it's sort of, okay. Can you see this? This is, in fact, it's exactly the same place. So what you can do, because I use a lot of natural light in my shoots as well. So here I've got a white background that I want to fill in, but he's overlapping here. So what you can do is copy that, paste it, transform it, bring it over. Yeah. Press Shift, extend it, double click, blend mode. Now in this case, the blend mode here is going to be darken. Okay. Now you can see straight away, because I changed the blend mode to darken, it's already made the perfect cutout. But if I then mask it, okay, B for brush, black brush, I can erase any of the odd coloration of getting the shirt there anyway. So you could do the same sort of thing and do it on, for example, if you had a grey background or a black background beyond the white background that you're using, you put it on lighten, and then you can erase it over the edge of the shoulder. Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
I'd love it if somebody had an example. I'd happily do it. It's much easier to do it than it is to, yeah, you can see all my work here, look. Yeah. That's a pet shot.
When you want something, Penny, you'll never find it.
I know, tell me about it. No, I can't see it. I've not got anything. Yeah, no, I can't find anything. But hopefully, you know, usually you can either copy a little bit. Have I got any in this shoot? Hang on. No, I usually shoot well within here. That one? No. No, I haven't got any here that I can just quickly show, regrettably. But I tell you what, who asked the question earlier?
I did.
No, we had Janet.
Oh, yeah.
Janet,
Yeah, I think it was Janet. Yeah.
send me a picture and I'll give you an example, or you can just give me a call and we can do a quick Zoom or something like that.
Is that all right, Janet? Yeah, she said thank you.
Yeah, there you go. All right. So
Yep.
that's it, hour and a half's worth. Are we all right with that? Or do you want to-
That's fantastic. Really good. And you could go on all day, Penny, really.
Yeah.
I think it's brilliant, Pani, because when we started this, Phil had hair and he hasn't now, so he scratched it all off. So yeah, I think this wonders what you've done, Pani. Cutting hair away as well, I think was brilliant.
Kept it all in a box.
Yeah.
You liquefied it. That's what you did.
Yeah.
Thank you, Penny.
That's a
Brilliant.
pleasure.
Yeah, thanks very much. That's excellent.
Everybody happy?
Yeah, fine, thank you.
Thanks a lot. That was amazing.
Good. Pleasure.
Thank you again, Pani. Much appreciated. You know that.
Okay.
And I know everybody appreciates all your knowledge, but it's also the way you put it across. It's fantastic. We ought to call you Professor.
All right, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, then.
Thank
Take
you,
care.
Penny.
Appreciate it.
All the best.
Cheers, everybody. Bye.
Thanks very
Thanks,
much.
Pani.
Bye.
Bye.